Dog buried alive, rescued by retired elderly woman and miraculously survives. When the senior woman discovered her heart condition, she almost gave up. What happened next transformed not only their lives, but an entire town. A journey of struggle, forgiveness, and purpose that will touch your soul. A story that proves the true miracle is unconditional love. Subscribe, like, and comment on where you are watching this emotional story of redemption from. The sun shone intensely that spring morning. The sky, an almost unreal blue, stretched over the peaceful town of Pleasantville, where time seemed to flow at its own pace, out of sync with the rush of big cities. Teresa, who had just turned 62, walked calmly through the neighborhood with her granddaughter Lily, a 7-year-old girl who skipped ahead, chasing an orange-winged butterfly. The tree-lined streets exuded the scent of flowers blooming after the last winter rains. The retiree knew every corner of that place like the back of her hand. A former elementary school teacher, she had taught almost half of the adults who now greeted her respectfully as she passed by. "Grandma, come see this," exclaimed Lily, pointing to a vacant lot to the left of the path. The girl had moved a few yards away, attracted by a strange movement in the ground of an abandoned plot. Teresa's heart inexplicably quickened. An unsettling premonition overcame her as she approached the place indicated by her granddaughter. A few steps away, she froze. There, partially covered by damp, disturbed earth, a dirty snout desperately tried to emerge from the ground, like some ghastly plant pushing up in reverse. "Stay back, Lily," she ordered in a firm voice, cautiously approaching. She knelt on the ground, ignoring her freshly washed skirt, and began to remove the soil with trembling hands. A faint whimper emerged from the earth, confirming her fears. It was not her imagination or a trick of the light. There was an animal buried alive in that lot. "Go get Mr. Joe, run," she instructed her granddaughter, who obeyed immediately, darting towards the blue house on the corner where the neighbor, a strong and kind gentleman in his early 70s, would probably be watering his begonias as he did every morning. The minutes that followed seemed eternal. Teresa continued digging with her hands, now dirty and scratched, trying to free the animal that was breathing with difficulty. Soon she could see that it was a caramel-colored dog, whose almond-shaped eyes stared at her with a mixture of terror and hope. "Hang in there, little one," she whispered, feeling tears run down her face. "We're going to get you out of there." The sound of hurried footsteps announced the arrival of Mr. Joe, who brought a garden shovel with him. The man asked no questions. The scene spoke for itself. With precise movements, he began to dig around the animal, taking care not to hurt. "You'll be good heavens, this is barbaric," he murmured repeatedly as he worked. "Who would do such a thing?" Lily watched everything from a safe distance, her small hands covering her mouth in shock. Her eyes, identical to her grandmother's, were wide open, witnessing a cruelty incomprehensible to her childish mind. After 20 minutes of careful work, they finally managed to free the animal. It was a medium-sized Labrador, young, maybe 2 years old at most. His body trembled uncontrollably, covered in dirt and superficial wounds. His tongue was hanging out, dry and cracked, showing severe dehydration. "We need to take him to a vet clinic immediately," declared Teresa, taking off her light jacket to cover the dog. "We don't know how long he's been here." Mr. Joe nodded, gently picking up the animal in his strong, retired farmer's arms. The dog did not resist. Perhaps he was too weak or, who knows, instinctively understood that these people represented his only chance of survival. The nearest vet clinic was 10 minutes away. Mr. Joe placed the animal in the back seat of his old blue Volkswagen, where Teresa sat, cradling the dog's head in her lap. Lily got into the passenger seat, constantly turning around to check on the rescued animal's condition. "Everything will be all right, won't it, Grandma?" she asked in a trembling voice. Teresa hesitated for a moment. She had never lied to her granddaughter, but neither did she want to terrify her with the real possibility that the dog would not survive. "We're going to do everything we can, my love," she finally replied, while stroking the animal's dirty ears, who looked at her with half-closed eyes. The vet clinic was a modest establishment painted light green with an unassuming sign. When they entered carrying the limp dog, The receptionist immediately called the on-duty veterinarian. Dr. Emily Carter had just turned 26 and had been practicing for just 6 months. Of short stature and curly hair tied in a practical bun, she exuded a confidence that did not match her limited professional experience. "Put him here," she instructed, indicating the examination table. Her dark brown eyes quickly assessed the animal's condition as she put on procedure gloves. "What happened?" In sentences punctuated by emotion, Teresa explained how they had found the dog. The young vet's face hardened into an expression of contained indignation. "Buried alive," she repeated in a low voice, as if needing to hear the words to believe them. "In 15 years of dealing with animals, first as a volunteer and now as professional, I am still surprised by human cruelty." Her nimble hands examined the animal as she spoke. She checked his mucous membranes, palpated his abdomen, listened to his heart and lungs. "He is severely dehydrated and has mild hypothermia," she diagnosed. "We need to stabilize him first." There are also defensive wounds on his front paws, suggesting that he fought before this happened. Lily, who watched everything with anguished attention, asked in a small voice, "Will he be okay, doctor?" Emily looked at the girl with a soft smile, the first since they entered the clinic. "He's very strong, little one. He's already survived. The worst. Now he's in the best possible hands. Ours." In the following hours, the dog received IV fluids, antibiotics, and intensive care. Teresa refused to leave the clinic, sending Mr. Joe to take Lily home with the promise to keep them informed of any developments. It was past 7 in the evening when the animal finally opened his eyes completely and lifted his head, still connected to the IV drip. His gaze met Teresa's, who had remained seated in an uncomfortable chair near the kennel where he rested. "Hey there, champ," she whispered, cautiously approaching. The dog watched her for a few moments before doing something that deeply moved the senior woman. He wagged his tail slightly. Dr. Emily, who entered at that moment to check the patient's vital signs, smiled at the scene. "That's amazing," she commented, checking the IV drip. "After what he's been through, it would be understandable if he developed a fear of humans. However, it seems he knows how to distinguish between who hurt him and who came to help him." "How can people capable of such cruelty exist?" questioned Teresa, more to herself than to the vet. Emily sighed, adjusting the stethoscope around her neck. "That's a question I ask myself daily. I have no answer." After a brief silence, the doctor added, "He's responding well to treatment, but he'll need special care in the coming days. Do you know anyone who could adopt him? I can contact the local shelter, but..." She didn't need to complete the sentence. Both knew that the local shelter was always overcrowded, with insufficient resources to properly care for all the animals. "I'll keep him," declared Teresa, surprising herself with the firmness of her decision. "Temporarily, of course, until we find him a forever home." The young vet seemed relieved, but hesitated. "Are you sure? He'll need medication, special food in the first few days, and constant supervision." "I have all the time in the world," replied the retiree with a tired smile. "And I feel that in some way, it was more than coincidence that we found this little guy. Maybe he has something to teach us." 2 days later, with the animal already considerably recovered, Teresa took him home. Her apartment was on the 2nd floor of a small building without an elevator downtown. It was about 730 square feet distributed in 2 bedrooms, a living room, kitchen, and a bathroom. Enough space for a lady living alone, but certainly cramped to accommodate a medium-sized Labrador. Lily was waiting anxiously at the door, jumping with excitement when she saw her grandmother climbing the stairs with the dog, who walked slowly beside her, held by a makeshift leash. "You brought him, Grandma, you really brought him," she exclaimed, cautiously approaching as instructed. The Labrador sniffed the girl's outstretched hand before gently licking it, eliciting laughter from Lily. "What are we going to call him?" asked the girl while watching the animal timidly explore the new environment. Teresa watched the dog for a few moments. His caramel coat shone clean after his bath at the clinic, but his ribs were still slightly visible under his fur. His eyes, however, no longer showed only fear. There was a spark of curiosity and perhaps hope. "Miracle," she finally replied. "We'll call him Miracle because that's exactly what happened when we found him in time." The name stuck immediately. Even Dr. Emily, when she called that night to check how the animal was adapting, referred to him as our Miracle. The first days were challenging. Miracle needed medication 3 times a day, follow a specific diet to regain weight, and still showed clear signs of anxiety when left alone, even for a few minutes. Teresa adapted her routine entirely to the dog's needs, converting a corner of the living room into a cozy space with soft cushions and toys she bought with part of her modest retirement income. What she did not foresee, however, were the building management issues. On the morning of the 4th day after Miracle's arrival, the building manager, Mrs. Rodriguez, a middle-aged woman with a permanently disapproving expression, knocked on her door. "Teresa, you know the building rules prohibit pets," she declared without preamble, looking over her purple-framed glasses at the Labrador resting in the living room. "We've received complaints about noises and potential hygiene issues." "Mrs. Rodriguez, it's a temporary situation," explained Teresa, remaining calm despite her growing irritation. "This dog was rescued in terrible conditions, and I'm just taking care of him until we find him a forever home." The building manager sighed, adjusting her glasses. "I understand your good intentions, but rules are rules. You have 1 week to resolve this situation, or we'll have to apply the penalties outlined in the rules, starting with daily fines." When the door closed, Teresa sat on the sofa, feeling the weight of that new complication. Miracle slowly approached, placing his head in her lap as if understanding her concern. "What are we going to do, friend?" she whispered, stroking the animal's soft ears. That same afternoon, during a follow-up visit to the vet clinic, Teresa shared her concerns with Dr. Emily. "Besides the building issue, I'm worried about the long-term costs," she confessed while watching the doctor examine Miracle. "My retirement income barely covers my own expenses, and this apartment really isn't the ideal place for a dog of this size." Emily nodded, understanding. "I understand your concern, Teresa, but I have news that may complicate your decision even further." The vet showed the results of more detailed exams she had performed. Miracle has a congenital heart condition. It's not extremely serious, but it will require ongoing medication and regular checkups. In other words, whoever adopts him will need to be prepared for a permanent financial commitment. Teresa felt a pang in her heart. The possibility of finding a home for Miracle had just become significantly more difficult. As they walked back home, walking slowly to accommodate the dog's pace, Teresa struggled with contradictory thoughts. How could she keep Miracle in her apartment, against the building rules with limited financial resources? On the other hand, how could she abandon him again when he was finally starting to trust humans? It was Lily who inadvertently offered a solution. The next afternoon, while playing with Miracle in her grandmother's small apartment, the girl had an idea. "Grandma, can I take pictures of Miracle to show at school? My teacher said we can do a presentation about something important to us, and I want to talk about how we saved him." The idea quickly evolved. With the help of Lily's mother, Christine, Teresa's only daughter and a computer teacher at the local school, they created not just some photos, but a complete profile on social media dedicated to Miracle's recovery. "Miracle Mission," suggested Christine, typing the hashtag as she uploaded the first photo of the dog, still at the clinic, connected to the IV drip. "We'll tell his story from the rescue to his full recovery." People love animal rescue stories. Teresa, who barely knew how to use the smartphone her daughter had insisted on giving her the previous Christmas, watched with a mixture of fascination and skepticism. "Do you really think anyone will be interested in the story of a dog from a small town?" Christine smiled, finalizing the inaugural post. "Mom, you have no idea of the power of social media. Stories like Miracle's connect people, transcend borders. And who knows, we might even get help with his treatment costs." Teresa's daughter was right, but not even she could predict the magnitude of the response. In less than 48 hours, Miracle's profile accumulated more than 5,000 followers. In a week, there were already over 20,000. People from Budai all over the country and eventually from other countries followed daily updates on the progress of the caramel Labrador, who had been buried alive and rescued by a senior woman and her granddaughter. Messages of support arrived by the thousands. "Miracle makes me believe in better days," wrote a follower from Bahia. "I follow his recovery every morning before going for chemotherapy treatment. It gives me strength to continue," shared a gentleman from Recife. At the same time, indignation grew. "Whoever did this needs to be punished," was a recurring cry in the comments. Public pressure, amplified by the virality of the case, forced local authorities to intensify investigations to find the person responsible for the crime against Detective Mendonça, a man of serious appearance and relentless method, personally took over the case. "Crimes against animals often precede or accompany other types of violence," he explained during a visit to Teresa's house to collect more information. "Furthermore, with the national repercussion, we need to demonstrate that our city does not tolerate this type of cruelty." Initial investigations pointed to a nearby farm, owned by a local businessman known for his difficult temper. Employees reported seeing a dog similar to Miracle in the weeks leading up to the incident. When confronted, businessman Paul Gomes reacted with indignation. "This is absurd. I have 3 dogs on my property, all well cared for as anyone can verify. Why would I harm an animal?" To prove his innocence and perhaps to improve his public image, Gomes offered a reward of $5,000 for information leading to the identification of the true culprit. Furthermore, he added in an interview with the local newspaper, "I will make a donation to cover all of the animal's medical costs for the next 2 years." Miracle's online campaign, however, had already achieved that goal. A virtual fundraiser, started by an animal cause influencer who was moved by the story, raised over $15,000 in just 3 days. The money would be enough to cover not only the heart medication, but also to adapt a suitable space for Miracle, since Teresa's apartment continued to be a problem. Speaking of apartment, the building manager, Mrs. Rodriguez, surprised everyone by retracting her previous position. "Considering the exceptional circumstances," she declared at a specially convened building meeting, "I propose a temporary exception to the rules, allowing Teresa to keep the animal until a permanent solution is found." The change of attitude was not exactly spontaneous. The building manager's daughter, a 15-year-old teenager, was one of the most enthusiastic followers of Miracle's page and had insisted that her mother reconsider her position, especially after the story gained national notoriety. 3 months passed. Miracle was almost unrecognizable compared to the scared and malnourished animal they had rescued. His coat shone healthily, he had gained adequate weight, and his gaze showed confidence and joy. The heart medications worked perfectly, keeping his condition under control. On the streets, he was a minor celebrity. People stopped to greet him and take pictures, to the discomfort of Teresa, who had never particularly appreciated public attention. It was at this moment that the case took an unexpected turn. A young man in his early 20s voluntarily presented himself at the police station. Thin of ordinary appearance and restless eyes, Lucas Pereira confessed to being responsible for abandoning Miracle. "I found the dog wandering on the highway near the bus station," he explained to Detective Mendonça, with Teresa present at her own request. "He seemed lost, so I put him in the cab of the truck I drive. I planned to take him home, but during the trip he fainted twice. I panicked." Lucas explained that, upon realizing that the dog had health problems, he panicked, thinking about the veterinary costs he could not afford. "I only earn minimum wage. I have my sick mother to take care of. I panicked and did this terrible thing. I didn't try to kill him, I swear. I thought someone would find him quickly in that lot, which is close to houses." Teresa, who had listened to everything in silence, surprised everyone by saying, "I believe him. Veer makes people make terrible mistakes. I don't want him to be arrested, detective. I want him to learn to repair his mistake in other ways." After lengthy deliberations involving the district attorney, it was established that Lucas would perform community service at the municipal animal shelter for a year, in addition to compulsorily attending a basic veterinary care course. He accepted the conditions with visible relief, and, to the surprise of many, with apparent sincerity in his regret. The story would have ended there, with a lesson about repentance and second chances, were it not for a new development that no one could foresee. A famous magazine dedicated to animal causes published a cover story about Miracle, describing in detail his journey from rescue to his new life with Teresa. The report caught the attention of an NGO specializing in training dogs for assisted therapy. "His temperament is extraordinary," commented Dr. Sylvia Romero, psychologist and program coordinator, after meeting Miracle personally. "After everything he's been through, this dog shows no aggression or excessive fear of humans. It's almost as if he understands that some people are good, others not, but without generalizing his negative experiences." The organization proposed including Miracle in its therapy dog program, which visited hospitals, nursing homes, and rehabilitation centers, offering emotional comfort to patients in recovery or facing terminal illnesses. For Teresa, the proposal generated conflicting feelings. On the one hand, she knew that Miracle could help many people, and the NGO offered ideal conditions for a dog with his specific needs. On the other hand, the bond she had developed with the animal was deep. Furthermore, there was Lily, who considered Miracle practically part of the family. "I can't do this to my granddaughter," she confided to her daughter while watching Lily play with Miracle in the small community garden of the building. For her, it would be like losing a brother. Christine understood her mother's hesitation but offered a different perspective. "You always taught us that true love sometimes means letting go for the good of the other. Maybe Miracle has a greater purpose. Maybe he needs to touch more lives just like he touched ours." The decision was postponed for weeks, while Teresa confronted her internal conflicts. It was then that something extraordinary happened, during the annual town festival, 6 months after Miracle's rescue. The event, which celebrated the town's founding, attracted visitors from all over the region. Colorful stalls occupied the central square. Live music enlivened the atmosphere, and the aroma of typical foods filled the air. Teresa had taken Miracle, already perfectly accustomed to busy environments thanks to the many educational walks they took daily. At some point, while Teresa was talking to a former work colleague, Miracle simply disappeared. One moment he was there, lying quietly beside her. The next he had vanished into the crowd. The panic was immediate. The news that the already famous Miracle dog had disappeared spread quickly through the festival. Volunteers organized into search groups, the police were called, and the social media page transformed into a virtual search coordination center with real-time updates. For 2 agonizing days, there was no sign of Miracle. Teresa barely slept, consumed by guilt and fear. What if someone recognized him and took him? What if he's scared, lost? What if... The dark possibilities multiplied in her mind, while the entire town mobilized in the search. Christine practically moved temporarily to her mother's apartment, worried about her emotional state. Lily cried frequently, hugging Miracle's empty bed. On the morning of the 3rd day, the phone rang. It was the receptionist from the municipal hospital. "Teresa, you're not going to believe it, but there's a caramel Labrador sitting at the hospital entrance since 5 in the morning. He's wearing a blue collar with a tag that says Miracle. It's your dog, isn't it?" Teresa and Christine immediately drove to the hospital located on the outskirts of town. There, they found Miracle sitting patiently at the main door, as if waiting for something or someone. When he saw Teresa, the dog ran towards her, wagging his tail frantically. "How did he get here? It's almost 3 miles from downtown," exclaimed Christine, kneeling to examine Miracle, who seemed perfectly fine, just a little dirty. A nurse who was watching the scene approached. "Is that the famous Miracle? We were just talking about him yesterday. We have a patient in the pediatric ward, a 9-year-old girl undergoing cancer treatment, who religiously follows his story. She would be so happy to meet him." Teresa looked at Miracle, then at the hospital, and something clicked in her mind. It was as if the dog had deliberately chosen that place, as if he was saying in his own way what his path should be. I "Think he came exactly for this?" she murmured, surprised by her own conclusion. "Can we visit this girl now?" That impromptu visit to the hospital changed everything. Little Mariana's joy at meeting Miracle in person was indescribable. Other pediatric patients soon learned of the internet dog's presence, and with the permission of the hospital administration, Miracle went from room to room, receiving and distributing affection. "He is naturally therapeutic," commented the hospital psychologist, observing how the dog seemed to sense which children could be approached with more energy and which needed a calmer, more comforting presence. That same day, Teresa contacted the assisted therapy NGO. "I accept your proposal," she said on the phone, "but with one condition. I remain Miracle's official guardian and accompany him on his therapeutic visits." The coordinator not only agreed, but proposed that Teresa receive formal training as a program volunteer. "Your presence will only enrich the experience, both for Miracle and for the patients," she assured. The first year after the rescue transformed not only Miracle's life, but that of the entire community around him. Teresa, using part of the funds raised in the online campaign, moved to a small ranch-style house on the outskirts of town, with a backyard where Miracle could run freely. Her former quiet and predictable existence gave way to a dynamic routine, full of purpose and new connections. Twice a week, she and Miracle visited hospitals and long-term care facilities for the elderly. The rest of the time was divided between ongoing training sessions, periodic veterinary checkups, and meetings with school groups who visited her house to learn about animal welfare and the work of therapy dogs. "Who would have thought that at 63 I would find a new vocation?" she once commented to her daughter, while watching Miracle interact gently with an autistic child who rarely responded to other forms of therapy. The case inspired concrete changes in municipal legislation. The mayor, sensitized by the popular mobilization around Miracle, enacted a law establishing harsher penalties for animal abuse and instituting educational programs on the subject in public schools. Dr. Emily, driven by the experience, opened a clinic specializing in rescued animals, offering treatment at affordable prices and flexible payment plans for low-income guardians. The new clinic, named Miracle Institute, became a regional reference in social veterinary medicine. As for Lucas, the young trucker who had abandoned Miracle, his trajectory surprised everyone. After completing his period of community service at the animal shelter, he continued to volunteer there. Using his professional experience as a driver, he created a volunteer transport network for rescued animals that needed to be taken to specialized clinics in other cities. "I never imagined that my worst mistake would lead me to what I now consider my life's mission," he declared during a small ceremony, where he received a certificate of recognition for his services to the animal cause. The reunion between Lucas and Miracle, carefully mediated by Teresa, was emotional. The dog, demonstrating once again his extraordinary capacity for understanding, cautiously approached the young man before allowing his touch. For many present, that moment symbolized the power of forgiveness and genuine transformation. The culmination of this extraordinary journey occurred exactly 1 year after Miracle's temporary disappearance during the town festival. On that sunny spring morning, brighter and more promising than the previous years, the mayor presented Miracle with the title of Honorary Citizen, the first time in the municipality's history that an animal had received such distinction. The ceremony, broadcast live on the social media networks that had been so crucial to Miracle's story, attracted over 200,000 simultaneous views. Visitors from neighboring towns attended in person, eager to witness the event that would consolidate the transformation of the small Pleasantville, now affectionately known as the town that loves animals. Teresa, normally averse to the spotlight, agreed to give a brief speech on the occasion. Standing on the small stage set up in the central square, with Miracle sitting dignifiedly beside her, she adjusted her glasses and faced the assembled crowd. "A year ago, we found a dog buried alive in a vacant lot. Today, we celebrate not only his survival, but the impact his story has had on all of us. Miracle taught us about resilience, forgiveness, and purpose. He reminded us that second chances are precious and that shadows can turn into light. She paused, gently stroking the Labrador's head before continuing. But perhaps the most important lesson is that small acts, whether of cruelty or kindness, have the power to unleash waves of transformation far beyond what we can imagine. By rescuing Miracle, we didn't know that we were, in a way, rescuing ourselves, rediscovering our capacity to care, to act, to change. The former teacher's simple words reverberated through the silent square, touching hearts and provoking reflections. When she finished her speech, the applause was deafening. Miracle, apparently understanding the solemnity of the moment, remained seated in perfect posture, as if proudly accepting the honor on behalf of all the animals who were still awaiting their own miracle of rescue and redemption. The extraordinary journey of that caramel Labrador, from the disturbed soil of a vacant lot to the position of symbol of an entire community, demonstrated how the bond between humans and animals can transcend traumas and transform lives. From a dog abandoned on the brink of death to an agent of social transformation, Miracle proved daily that second chances can, indeed, result in true miracles when they find hearts willing to love unconditionally. And as the ceremony ended under the blue sky of that promising spring, Teresa reflected on how her own life had been enriched and redefined by that seemingly ordinary morning when she decided to take her granddaughter for a simple walk. Small choices, great miracles. This was perhaps the true essence of the life they all shared. Humans and animals, united in an invisible web of intertwined destinies.